Okay. I always bring some kind of handouts and books. I have a handout for when before you go. I whipped up this morning, but I'm going to go through a couple things on that. I have a homework movie I would like you to watch, and I have a link. There's a link for a podcast and a link for a YouTube. Obviously, I can't make you. You do it on your own time, but there's some really good ones. And I put on there too certain people I follow. I do have 2 or 3 handouts for you, and those of you who know me, a little back, here's my name, in case some people don't know what I do, right? I'm full-time faculty and department chair for health and fitness education. My background, I have a master's degree in health education. My undergrad is health education with a minor in biology and psychology. So, a little, oops. Oh, I thought the door was locked. Sorry. That's okay. So those are people who know me know I have been a little bit outside the box when it comes to recommendations, because I think sometimes people want recommendations to follow and they're not sure what to do, so they want to be spoon-fed a little bit because it's confusing. Nutrition is confusing. Even my students, as they learn, they tell me, I'm more confused now. And I'm like, that's not a bad thing, right? That's okay. And I want you to research and be a little mixed up or befuddled. That's okay, because it pushes you to research or to read more and do more. So for many years, I have been using this book as a second book along with my new textbook for my nutrition class, which is a 200-level science class required for the nursing students and fitness students and dental hygienists, etc. And this book is called Low Fat Lies, High Fat Frauds. A lot of you know this book. My students don't even sell it back. They love it so much they give it to somebody or hang on to it. And basically, this is 10 years old now, but it's a medical doctor and a PhD nutritionist wrote this book. And it really was to blast the myths out there. So what I have, and I have many articles. I didn't copy all the articles, but I can just give you a few. There's so much misinformation or myths out there. But for example, these are 3. Washington Post, the U.S. government is poised to withdraw longstanding warnings about cholesterol and fat. Cholesterol, the government's bad diet advice, New York Times. This is a critical review in PubMed regarding food science and nutrition and rethinking the dietary guidelines. Well, I'm always rethinking the guidelines. You should too. They get published, hopefully they publish them every 5 years. And we do discuss them in my class, but we talk about the good things and the bad things. Nothing is perfect. I even have my students in my online women's health class evaluate the different healthy eating guides, because there's many. There's the one I'm favorite of, which is this one. Anybody know what's the favorite one is this one is? The healthy food guide? You remember, Mary? See, she hung on to the book. It's Mediterranean Lifestyle. Mediterranean is not a diet. It is a lifestyle. It's been around for probably forever. There you go. Mary's got a Mediterranean. So I've been using this book in my class for 12 years at least. And it conflicts a little bit with the USDA, but not all. It overlaps. There's a lot of overlap. They talk about the good things. Every time there's a change in the USDA, it gets a little bit better. I always tell my students that the guidelines aren't bad because they make general recommendations like drink more water, watch your sodium intake, etc. The plate I'm not overly thrilled with because they leave out a major food group. Anybody know what it is? No, my students will tell you, we consume the wrong kind of dairy. But this is fruits, protein source, veggies, and a grain. So it's not bad in the sense that half the plate was now recommended to be plant-based, right? But it doesn't specify examples. So, and they count, in the fruit area, they count juice, which to me very small amounts of fruit should be consumed in your diet or your data, because it's basically as much sugar as there is in soda. And you remove all the fiber. There's no fiber left in juice, okay? Yes, there's a difference between orange juice and Sunny D, which I joke about. 10% fruit juice versus 100. But you're getting a lot of sugar because it takes a lot of oranges to make a glass of orange juice, right? Eat the orange, because then you have all the vitamins, minerals, and fiber that you don't get in a glass of orange juice, okay? Protein, they did at least say protein, not just meat. This one, controversial a little bit, But that takes me into another healthy eating plate, which I'm sure you've heard of Harvard University. It's called a healthy eating plate. It's very similar. It's Dr. Walter Willett is the head of epidemiology and nutrition at Harvard. And it's very similar in that it's vegetables, fruits, healthy protein, and whole grains. They use water instead of milk. And they have separate over here, which we don't have. Nobody knew it, that one. We don't have the healthy oils. And I say healthy oils because there are unhealthy oils, okay? So the U.S. Department of Agriculture, even though they recommend 20 to 35% of your intake should come from fats, then it should be on here. Even in the old pyramid that did the vertical lines, if anybody remembers that one, it did have a line for fats and oils. They removed it on here, okay, which I don't know why. All right, so let me jump over here for a second. So I want to give you a couple quotes. The disease I concentrate on a lot lately in my class of chronic diseases is diabetes. Now we know there's cancer. We could talk about all the different chronic conditions, right? The one I concentrate on more and more is diabetes because it is rapidly changing, okay? We have an obesity epidemic we've never seen the likes of in the last 40 to 50 years. Food has shifted, and thus a lot of the criticism is if you're following a specific guideline, it might not be the best guideline, right? So I'll give you an example. Dr. Robert Ratner, who is head of the American Diabetes Association, said diabetes worldwide is 350 million people. Now that's worldwide. But in the United States, 1 out of 3 Medicare dollars goes for for diabetes, and 1 out of 10 healthcare dollars goes to diabetes. It's 10% of your healthcare dollars is diabetes. It's huge. It's changing, okay? And now we know, even though they used to say the number one cause of diabetes was obesity, that's still a risk factor. Risk factors does not mean cause necessarily. But what they're finding out now is thin people. Thin people can be pre-diabetic or diabetic. You cannot tell by the body, by looking at the body. They actually have a term for it, it's called TOFI. It's thin on the outside, fat on the inside. It means because there's fat around the organs, fat around the liver, fat around the heart, etc. You can't always tell by looking at someone. And you can't pinch an inch, doesn't really tell you much, because I bet all of us could pinch an inch, right? So just a little bit of statistics. The government, and so I'm going to read a little fact out of my favorite book, and I do have a list of books for you. So, and the pages that this came from. So I want to give you a little history when the obesity epidemic started, but what happened in the 70s was really what happened with the Senate Select Committee on Nutrition and Human Needs, headed up by Senator George McGovern, did hearings on the connection between food and chronic disease. And they issued a report recommending, among other things, a reduction in the consumption of meat. That's what happened in the 70s. What do you think happened after that came out? Does anybody want to take a guess? What do you think the meat lobbyists had to say about that? They went crazy. They went berserk. Provoked an uproar in the meat industry and its lobbyists. So the committee revised its first report. Instead of calling for a decrease in the consumption of meat, they compromised and, quote, came out with, quote, decreased consumption of animal fat and choose meats, poultry, and fish, which reduce saturated fat intake. So it all got turned around to pick on fat, mostly saturated fat. The most, and I started this one, the most enduring and damaging effect was to shift the emphasis from food-based guidelines to nutrient-based guidelines, meaning they picked on the nutrient, which is, the macronutrients are fat, carbohydrates, and protein. Shifted to nutrient-based guidelines and fat, all fat became public enemy number 1. No population data or experimental data was given to suggest there was anything special about the 30% threshold that they came out with, which is less than 30% of your diet should be fat. It was an arbitrary choice. Nonetheless, it has been a national goal ever since. And by the way, the national obesity epidemic started at the same time in the 70s. And the correlation there, we've been tracking this in the last 40 to 50 years. What has actually changed? We've cut back drastically on fat, but people see the term low fat or zero fat. Like, remember when Snackwells came out, Snackwell cookies? People went nuts. They thought, oh, I can eat these, zero fat. Well, guess what? The calories were identical. You take fat out of anything. Would you agree fat tastes good? Fat tastes good and it fills you up. However, you take fat out of something, it tastes like cardboard, right? Salt, fat, it really tastes good. So they had to replace it with something. They replaced it with sugar. So the calories of sugar went up. So I'm not the only one saying that. I kind of have just summarizing some of the studies. So, and in the past 50 years, fat was cut by 25% overall, and carbohydrates were increased by more than 30%. Not 30%, increased by 30%. Epidemiological or observational studies show association, not causation. So just to remember that, a lot of these studies were based on observational studies. And I want to read this one quote for you. This is off of Dr. Robert Lustig, who I mentioned him. Any of you ever heard of Robert Lustig? He is a pediatric endocrinologist. Not a slouch, but this was on his YouTube that I watched recently. Quote, unquote, beating obesity will take action by all of us, based on one simple common sense fact. All calories count, no matter where they come from, including Coca-Cola and everything else with calories. This is a quote by the Coca-Cola Company, coming together in 2013. Okay, I'm here to say, all calories do count, but calories are not equal. Okay, a lot of nutritionists and registered dietitians historically were always the scale. Calories in, calories out, you won't gain weight. There's some truth to that because it comes down to physics. You burn calories that you eat, you won't gain weight. However, let's talk about the quality of those calories. If I have 200 calories of nuts in my hand here, almonds, and I have 200 calories of jelly beans, is there a difference in your body? I would like you to think so, right? So there is a difference. You know, my predecessor, those of you who remember Kathy Chamberlain, said it to me one time, a long time ago, I don't know, 18 years ago when she hired me. It was like, scale, right? I go, I don't think so, Kathy. But if you know Kathy, she was like, okay, what do you mean? So we had a great debate about it, and that's when I incorporated, well, a few years later, I incorporated this book. But she at least listened, and we talked about it. I said, you have to look at the quality of the calorie. It's not just about weight loss, weight gain, or counting calories and counting points, and I'm not picking on Weight Watchers. I know that's a popular thing for people because it's easy, but you can become point crazy too. I know a couple people, right, Mary? I think we've talked about that one in the past. People can get a little point crazy. Okay, back to my notes here. So just to say, there are food industries and food companies that, you know, really are powerful, whether it's commercials or SnackWells in the grocery store or commercials on television. Let's see, I'll wait till the end. I have a list of my 3 gurus that I follow right now. Recommended books, I brought a couple of them. I have a podcast and a YouTube on here. And then my last quote for when I go. I really try to, I think confusion is okay. I tell my students all the time, if you're confused, that's not a bad thing, okay? But I also want them to think for themselves. I think just because you want to follow this, or you want to follow the Harvard one, or you want to follow the Mediterranean one, I want you to think for yourself. If you tell me you think the USDA one is fine and you want to follow it as a general, I'm okay with that. But at least think about where your choices come from and where the recommendations come from. I am going to pass this handout around. This one was from health.gov. This is the average American diet, which we call in my class the SAD diet, the standard American diet. Some of my students say, I thought SAD meant seasonal affective disorder. That's in my other class. In nutrition, the SAD diet is standard American diet, which means a diet from a lot of fast food, right? French fries, fast food, and not a lot of cooking at home. And they admit to me all the time that cooking has fallen by the wayside. Right? We don't have time to cook. We don't, kitchens. I'm looking to buy a house right now. And I have to tell you, I'm looking at new homes up to 10 years old. I can't believe the size of the kitchens. I want a decent sized kitchen, right? And I think it's because the demand wasn't there for giant kitchens. The demand was there for a nice big family room, dining room, but not kitchens. So anyway, does everybody have a copy? Basically just says we don't eat enough vegetables. We eat too much sodium, and then and the added sugars, my little cookie over the side there, I didn't put the cookie, it came like this, added sugars. So we eat a lot of added sugars, right? And that's really because I think historically has gradually changed the way we have eaten. So I want to talk a little bit about the macronutrients in the sense that you have lipids or fats, right? And you have protein. And you have the famous carbs. And people are really, right now they're all like low carb diet, high carb diet, keto diet. There's so many diets, it's like befuddling. Right? It really is kind of frustrating. But I want you to think about there are good choices within each of the macronutrients. Okay? There are good lipids and bad lipids, right? Good and bad protein, and carbs. I tell my students all the time, I don't have a problem with you eating steak and chicken, but where are most of your steak and chicken coming from? Right? I'm thrilled if they tell me they go to Chipotle, okay? Because that's usually not what they're paying for. They're going for cheaper restaurants like McDonald's, Taco Bell, Wendy's, things like that. They're not cooking. They don't have time to cook. Why do you think that's a problem? Time or convenience? Personally, I think it's lack of time or priorities. Okay, I don't think cooking is a priority anymore with the American people. They get done with a long day of work, they come home, they're tired. If they have 2 or 3 kids, you gotta take care of the kids, you gotta feed the kids, you gotta cook for the kids. I think a lot of it is priority. And I'm not judging, I'm just saying, until we make cooking a priority and elevate it a little bit to where we can cook better or make small, quicker meals, that's the problem. People think they gotta sit down, I gotta have rice, meat, and veggie on every plate. You have a question, Mary? Yeah.
Places that will deliver just about any restaurant.
Yep. Yeah. It's become very easy. And even though I understand it, it's contributing a little bit to the problem. All right. So what I want to give you a handout now, just to look at for a few minutes. I know this is only a half hour, and I hope I have enough for everybody because there's more people than I originally saw on my list, but we'll see. And if you go that way, I think. This is a handout that really compares the 2 plates. Okay? I have one more here, because I think I have one. Here's one more. I have one more, so you can give that to somebody. Does everybody have one? Okay. So it's a little bit of what I talked about up here. But you can see under each side it talks about the different recommendations of the macronutrients. So for under the healthy eating plate, which is again Harvard, they recommend choosing whole grains. And I highlighted on here, refined grains like white bread and white rice act just like sugar in your body. And that's one of the problems, okay? Anything white, I tell my students, if it's white, and what's the #1 favorite snack for females? Well, I was saying pretzels because there's no fat, right? So
Popcorn?
Popcorn possibly, if you make it yourself, right? I would say then it's okay. The problem is those vending machines. Whereas on the USDA plate, it does say grains. I'm okay with that. But again, you have to know this means whole grains or should mean whole grains. If you read the guidelines, they do say whole grains, but they don't get into specifics where I wish they would. Healthy protein, again, the Harvard one says to choose fish, poultry, beans, or nuts. Protein sources that contain other healthful nutritions limit red meat and processed meats. Whereas the USDA one just says protein. Now this could be a hot dog or a hamburger, right? So there, again, the public has to be critical enough to figure out, do you want to feed your people hot dogs? I mean, hot dog once in a while is okay, but it should be, when you go to the games, the baseball games. Vegetables, abundant variety of vegetables, except for potatoes and French fries, right? By the way, government standards, French fries and ketchup are still considered vegetables. I'm just in school lunches, they get to count those as vegetables. The same effect, so this is fully rapidly digested starch, the same effect on blood sugar as refined grains and sweets. And on my plate, they don't distinguish between potatoes or other vegetables. Fruits, just a variety of fruits. I will say, they do say variety of fruits in the guidelines. However, I told you before, they do allow 100% juice. Stay away from drinking calories, guys. And I don't even like the diet sodas, but that's another story. Healthy fats are on the next page, the 3rd page. Healthy oils from the Harvard depicts a bottle of healthy oil, which I don't agree with canola. Canola's really fallen out of favor. okay, because of the way it's processed. So stick with your olive oil, all right? If you really need another oil, go with peanut oil because it's a monounsaturated fat like olive oil. You want to really avoid the polyunsaturated fats, the oils, because they cause inflammation and oxidation in your body. So that's why I would, if anybody says, why don't you eat corn oil or why don't you use safflower oil? It's because of the type of oil it is. It's very unstable based on its molecular structure. It has many double bonds, which make, the more double bonds in an oil, the more oxidative it is likely to make. And free radicals are what we don't want in our bodies because that causes early aging, cancer cells, etc. My plate is completely silent on lipids or fats. Water, the Harvard one talks about drinking water or try coffee or tea, avoid sugary drinks, limit dairy and milk to 1 to 2 servings a day. And that can also be, cottage cheese or yogurt. But there are studies that show high intakes of dairy are associated with an increased risk of prostate cancer and ovarian cancer. Limiting juice. All right, so that's just a little bit of a comparison I found, which is kind of interesting. I do want to mention, I did print this up. This is a little longer. I can always send Kathy the links to these articles, but they had pictures, so I just made one black and white copy. This is the Mediterranean. By the way, almost how many of you have a doctor who's telling you to go with the Mediterranean diet or lifestyle? Anybody? I hear it all the time. My students are telling me, her doctor told my mom to go on the Mediterranean diet. So it is out there more and more about the Mediterranean diet. So I'm just going to read off the titles of the sections so you have a little idea. Consume fish in abundance, and that means 2 to 3 times a week. Okay? Pour on the olive oil. Be moderate with dairy. Eat fresh whole foods. Avoid anything processed. You'd be surprised. There's a picture here of processed things. I would bet any of your kitchen cabinets or pantries would be full of processed things, right? Just because it's kind of what we do. Only eat healthy whole grains, right? Shun sugar. Cheers to wine, but guess what, guys? Wine is 3 to 4 ounces a day if you're female. That's not much. And guys in the room, I think there's only a couple, get to have double that. Anyway, pass on the red meat. As you know, the Mediterranean lifestyle in Greece and Europe, they don't eat red meat that often. It's a treat. They eat it maybe once or twice a month. Healthy benefits of the Mediterranean really comes down to inflammation, healthy fats. They're really big on healthy fats. Avocados, just any fat that comes from a plant source. Nuts, seeds, avocados, put them in your salads, put them in your smoothies. Avocados don't work well in smoothies though. But your toast, it works really good on it with your toast. Drink lots of water and eat more nuts and seeds. And I'm going to throw in there mushrooms because Pat asked me. Specifically, mushrooms are really good for you. They're not on the Mediterranean per se, but mushrooms in all different forms are a really good source. Okay, passed out those. So the 2 books that I'm reading right now are, interestingly, this one's called Unsavory Truth. And this is written by Marion Nestle, who is a PhD nutritionist at NYU and has written a number of books. And it's about food companies skew the science of what we eat. It's shocking. Be prepared for shock. That's all I can say. But it's really interesting on things. Basically, like Coca-Cola is coming to people like me and trying to say, we'll give you a stipend for research if you'll promote in your nutrition classes that all calories are okay in moderation. Really? You're going to pay me to do that? Anyway, facts. She's got facts, too. She's been around a long time. This is my next one. I'm reading these 2, juggling them. This one's called Food. I highly recommend this one. He's also got a wonderful podcast. Dr. Mark Hyman is the head of the Cleveland Clinic Functional Medicine. I have these names on the handout, guys, so you'll have it in a second. He's really going out about functional medicine, which is tied in with integrative medicine. But functional in the sense it's looking at the entire body, right? Your body isn't part and parcel. We don't look at your finger, right, or your cancer. We look at the whole body and heal the body as a whole. Again, not a slouch. Neither of these are slouches. The other doctor, I forgot to bring his book, is Dr. Robert Lustig. He was the pediatrician, the pediatric endocrinologist. He is on here, which I will pass you in a second since we're close to ending. I want to give you time for some questions. Your homework, if you choose to do, I show this in my nutrition class as homework for extra credit. So the movie's called Fed Up. It was on Netflix. It has recently been pulled off of Netflix. I do have a couple on reserve in the library. I believe you might be able to see if you Google this, if YouTube. The problem is they don't download the whole movie till it's really old, right? So there will be bits and pieces on YouTube. But if you can find it, it's 99 minutes long. But it's a documentary narrated by Katie Couric. And two of the heavy-handed doctors in it are Mark Hyman and Robert Lustig, the endocrinologist. And it's really talking about how the food industry is manipulating people, right? Okay, so that's your homework. And then my last quote for you, this is for you guys. I put this together this morning. My last thing for you guys before questions is don't believe or trust anyone. Do your own research and decide for yourself, right? A lot of it comes down to is what feels right to you. I can answer a specific question for you, like what do I have a problem? I could give you a chemical reason why I want you to have a certain fat over another fat, right? Or why, if you're going to have milk, I tell my students all the time, enjoy whole fat milk or whole fat yogurt because it's filling and you don't eat as much. And you don't have to, the cravings are limited. Again, and that's in all these articles about the low fat has gone away, recommendations they're even saying. And cholesterol, they have said over and over, I found it in like 5 articles, there is no appreciable relationship between dietary cholesterol and blood cholesterol because your body makes cholesterol. Did you know that? Your body, it's amazing. Your body makes about 17, I'm going to put approximate in front of it, milligrams of cholesterol every day. Your body's not dumb. So what happens if you have a couple eggs for breakfast? What's your body say? Ooh, Elaine ate some cholesterol today. I don't have to make as much. So it makes less, right? And they think that's, now there are certain people who are sensitive. There's a small percentage of people, usually it's a genetic number, who have a very specific link to sensitivity, I'll say, to cholesterol. But for the most part, the people who are having heart attacks don't have high cholesterol and vice versa, right? So it's interesting. And there's tons of literature to say that. Here's one quote I highlighted. Dietary fat may increase serum cholesterol, right, in some people. However, the opposite does not mean that dietary fat reduction will reduce your risk. So that's where the science is not fully followed through with some of the research. This handout really is about, I just put it together about today's talk. And the last line I put on here, which might be a little controversial in and of itself, if you don't want to do your own research and you want to rely on my talk, consider returning to what worked for previous generations. Fewer grains, less sugar, healthier choices of animal foods, vegetables, nuts, some fruits, full-fat dairy, olive oil, and eggs with the yolk. Eat your yolks, okay? They're good for you. Doesn't mean you eat eggs every day. I would never tell anybody. I've had one athlete in my class say, well, I eat a dozen eggs twice a week. I'm like, not necessarily good, but, how about 2 or 3 eggs a day, 3 or 4 times a week, right? So that's on that handout there. Did everybody get one? Do I have enough? I did. I think I have extras of this one. Thank you. That's just kind of my blurb. Now, if I can send it to you electronically because if you look on the back side, if you would like, if you notice I put my gurus at the top here are the 3 authors that I mentioned, Lustig, Hyman, and Marion Nestle. Recommended books, I have some recommended books I put on here for you. Robert Lustig wrote the book Fat Chance and Fat Chance Cookbook, which are really good. And he also wrote The Hacking of the American Mind, in the same genre as this one. Being really careful of lobbyists and food industry and how they try to persuade us to purchase money. It's all really about money, guys. Podcasts, I put on here Doctor's Pharmacy with an F, that's not a typo, with Mark Hyman. And then the YouTube, Hacking of the American Mind, similar to his book, was Robert Lustig, and that's a link if I send it to you electronically. Any questions? I have like 1 or 2 minutes for questions.
Have you read Mark Bittman?
Oh yeah, Mark Bittman's the chef. I love Mark Bittman. If any of you want to, this would be a really nice little homework thing. He has a 15-minute TED Talk. Just Google Mark Bittman TED Talk. It pops right up. I showed it in my class too as a debate. We talk about his talk, and he actually mentions Anne, drawing a blank on her last name. And she really attacks the recommendations of school lunches, the school lunch program. And so if you really want to know why this is important, even though I don't agree with everything on the USDA pyramid, this is critical. We have to know about it. We have to make changes because this is what advises school lunches and nursing homes. They go by this, right? So we'd like it to be updated. We'd like it to be tweaked. As a matter of fact, many years ago, Dr. Walter Willett at Harvard, before this one, it was a pyramid. He really was hoping the Harvard pyramid would get, this is like 10 years ago, 12 years ago. I knew, I was like, no way are they going to take that. No way, because it really didn't. It was more Mediterranean type pyramid, right? It picked on meat a little bit. So no, they weren't. I knew they weren't going to pick that. But he did come out with a plate to kind of go to really, so look at both. That's why I gave you that handout, so you could look at the two plates compared. It's not all bad, right? It's getting, every time it comes out, it's a little better, but it's like every 5 to 6 years it comes out. Read the dietary guidelines. I got to tell you, if you search them, they're really hard to find. I don't know why they bury them. They keep wanting you to link on to figure out your personal caloric needs. I'm like, to me, it's not about your calories. If everybody eats healthy, I'm not a proponent of counting calories. To me, it's a waste of time, really. If you eat right, the weight will fall off of you. It may take a while, right? Especially if you're a female after children.
Have you heard of the video called Sugar?
Yes, and I think that might be Robert Lustig's. Check, just look on it. I think it's Dr. Robert Lustig's.
And I read somewhere that if you want to figure out how many actual teaspoons of sugar are in your food,
yeah,
you divide the grams by.
Well, I'll tell you what is recommended by most physicians is less than 10% of your calories per day. So if you eat, women in the room should probably be consuming 1,600, sadly, because we don't lose it as easily as the men. 1,600. What's 10% of 1,600 is 160, right? So that's 160 calories of sugar sources. That's not much, right? That's like 1 or 2 cookies, right? But guess what? If you look at a food label, by the way, check this out when you go home. Look at a food label and look, you know how it gives you the percent daily values for everything it recommends? There'll be so much you should have for fiber, vitamin A, all those. It'll have a percent. Next to sugar, it is 0 because the government does not want to say less than 10%. They say less than 25%. Really? A quarter of your calories can be from sugar? That should shock all of you, okay? That should shock all of you. That's actually mentioned, they talk about that in the movie here, when you see this movie. They talk about the food recommendations on the pyramid, on the food labels. So, any other questions?
Is that movie on here?
No. I did not put that on there. I apologize. Fed up. I will add it. When I go back to my office, I'll put that on there. Yeah. I literally put that together at 9 o'clock this morning because I was on just so I had kind of like a less.
We're going to ask, so if you just.
Yeah. I will add fed up. Well, the only link on there is for the YouTube, but I will forward my handout that you got, and I'll add the fed up. I just put this on here because there's a couple other movies that are excellent. How many of you have seen Forks Over Knives? That's one of my class does that for homework too. Very, very vegetarian, basically vegan or vegetarian. I'm not trying to turn anybody into a vegetarian, but the science in that one is phenomenal. So I'll add Forks Over Knives on there too. That one is on Netflix. Okay, this one was on Netflix till about a month ago. I think they track me. They know when my students are. So Forks Over Knives is a little older, so. They do that for homework, extra credit. These two are extra credit homework. I have a really good one on stress also. If anybody wants to see on stress, I'll put that on there. It's really about how stress is involved with belly fat and really does affect your health. So those are my 3 movies they watch at home for homework or extra credit. I don't take class time because they're too long, but good questions. I hope I see you again. I'm doing 2 more 2 more.
Elaine's going to be on twice a week.
Thank you.
I don't remember what stay tuned. I don't remember what the topics are, but we'll deal with it.